Right. Welcome back to another edition of the Pair Genius podcast. We actually have a crossover from the conspiracy realm, and it's Heidi Luv from the Unfiltered Rise podcast. And this is just a lady that is awesome, and she lives in Utah.
I've heard nothing but amazing things from you. You were so excited when she booked Pair Genius. Yes, Heidi's coming.
Because conspiracy people are regular people. I tell you what.
That's right.
We are the ones that are right 6 months ahead of time, and then everybody's like, "Why didn't you tell us?" And
I tell my mom all the time, and she's like, "You know that thing you were saying?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "It's happening." I'm like, "Yeah, I know."
Go figure.
Yeah, I would say though, the thing that makes me better than most conspiracy theorists is I don't have amnesia. If I'm wrong about a certain thing and it goes a different way. I've kept my own receipts and like, yeah, no, that was totally out to lunch, totally missed it. Whereas most will be like, oh, I never said that, or they're batting 1,000% for conspiracy.
Yeah. I feel like part of being a true podcaster and not like one of the people that are paid to fit in with us or people that are on the payroll for the 3-letter agencies, right? You have to be real. Like, you can't be this fake. Like, if I mess it up, then I mess it up. Cool. Like, this is my hypothesis. So
I don't think I have the data or the memory to keep track of all the lies. Like a good psychopath, a good liar has to keep the receipts, has to keep track of all these things. I'm not that smart.
I mean, I don't think that I think that from lifetime to lifetime, you don't keep that crap anyway. You travel very lightly through life. So why not just let it go?
My parents always, they told me if you don't lie at all, you never have to cover a lie. So I've always just gone with that because it's rough, right? Yep. Can't remember. I'm like you.
Yeah, I just don't remember everything. So, I
talk a lot. Yeah.
I have to actually go back to the recordings and listen. It's like, oh, wow, I actually said that. I'm always quite shocked at the things I say. And sometimes I say profound things.
I think lots of times you do.
And to me, it's common sense.
Well, and I mean, it's not like we can figure it all out when they classify everything we research. Like, I've spent half of my morning with JFK because that's my little rabbit hole right now, and RFK, which I didn't even mean to. It was way before the disclosure, but when that day happened at work, you want to see the biggest dork ever? I was like, oh my gosh. And they're like, why do you care about this? You're super not that age. I'm like, you don't even know aliens. And so, yeah.
I think JFK is probably the mother of all conspiracies.
It is. You know why I ended up there. I never research anything unless it has to do with Mormons. And I was like, why are the Mormons here? Why are the Nazis here? And why did it go to aliens? Maybe Scientology is right and Xenu is the answer. I don't know.
I watched a really funny scientist. What is it called? Scientism? No.
Yeah, Scientology.
I watched a funny cartoon where this like alien came down and started humping the earth and impregnating it, and then
true.
That's what gave birth to all. It was wild.
Babylon. It was part of the Babylon workings. I'm certain. Hey, how do you think we got all that information? Somebody had to give up something somewhere. Usually, it's behind them.
I will tell you a quick story. I don't even know if you know this story about me, but when I used to bus downtown in Winnipeg to school, to college, I would always be waiting at the bus stop, and right across from me
was the
Church of Scientology. And they were always hiring. I'm like, oh, I could use a job. I should probably go. But I never pulled the trigger. I was always like, I wonder what Tom Cruise knows that I don't know.
They're not going to tell you. You have to go through all your, what do they call those things where they record you?
Your levels.
Yeah, you have to do so much money and lots of like dirt on you, and then they'll tell you the truth.
Dirt on me. I mean, my life's pretty open. Like, go ahead and look for the dirt. Have fun.
But these rich people, though, they got some dirt. Let me tell you,
like they have dirt. Yeah.
Yeah. Look at Diddy.
Diddy.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Man, we're really going down the conspiracy rabbit
It's
hole
funny
here.
because I don't
Sorry.
know anything about conspiracy. Like I get like whiffs of it once in a while from you, like this conspiracy thing, and I'm like, I don't know. It's just washing over me.
My husband is like you, except he always is pretty open to everything I have to say until it gets to Nephilim or aliens, and then he's out. He's like, "You are freaking me out. You are freaking me out." And he's like, "It's not that I don't believe you. I just don't want to know." And I'm like, "Valid. It's
I was
okay."
totally gonna ask if your husband was more like me or in the conspiracy
Yep.
with you. So that's awesome.
He's like little toes deep in. He's all about the Mormon stuff because we're both ex-Mormons. He's like, yeah, I see it. But like the big stuff, like aliens and Nephilim, just freak him out. And I'm like, look at these skeletons. Like if I start doing that stuff where it's like real, he's like, oh my gosh, you're trying to kill me right now. Like, please stop it. And I'm like, what? I just want you to know the truth. And one time I did black pill my mom, and that was pretty fun. As my mom was starting in on my podcast because she's my super fan and I love her. Hi, mom. Yes, she's
Hopefully
great.
she'll
And
be a fan of this show too now.
she watches all the shows. And you know what? She's subscribed to so many people's Patreons. So you might have a new Patreon. I'm not even kidding.
I need to
I
start
was like,
those.
wow. Yeah, she was on Nephilim Death Squad's Patreon and he started laughing and he was like, I don't want your mom on my Patreon. Because I guess they say bad stuff. And I was like, dude, she was a hippie. My name's Heidi Luv. Like, what? Oh, but yeah, I black pilled her once. She was like calling me and she goes, I just don't want the second coming of Christ to come and me not to know it because I think it's Project Bluebeam. And I'm like, what have you been watching today? And she goes, Donut. I was like, that's really big for you. I don't know if you should be watching that.
I'm pretty sure that went over 99% of people's heads.
Including mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know
Oh,
what's so great is that you can have a marriage where one person is into conspiracy and the other one is not so much. The key is to be open to it, right? Like he can talk to me
Yes.
all he wants, and I will always come back to him and say, okay, but here's the higher perspective. Here's like the motif, the higher motif to ground you back down a little bit.
Yeah, it's true. If we were just let go on our own with a bunch of us, like think of like a girl Raoul being married to him, that would not be good. You would be visiting me at the mental institution.
it would
Like
be
that's for
wild.
sure.
You know what's so crazy is that I have never been on Firmamental, and I'm very sure it's because
Oh.
Raul is scared to death of me. Like,
She's lying because she's been up for mental two
okay,
times.
this does not count in LA because it was a group of guys. Like, it was just,
Okay,
and I just
okay.
happened to be there, and I'm sure it was a pity invite.
Ah. Well, they're fun. I mean, I have to say, like, my husband, he's been asked a lot to come on, and he's always just like, no.
Never.
He's lifting weights. Yeah, that's what he does. So
Nice.
he works, blue collar guy, lifts weights. He always says, "I'm just a regular guy." I'm like, okay, babe.
Yeah, but we're all regular people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Right. I've invited a lot of my friends to come on the show and they're like, well, what do I have to say? I'm like, dude, I don't think you understand that everybody is fascinating. Everybody
Yes.
has an interesting story. And because, I mean, we're all so close to our own stories, but people want to hear other people's how fucked up they are and the
It's
things
true.
because everybody just feels alone. Everybody just feels like they're suffering alone. And when you realize that everybody's going through something crazy, it might not be as crazy as that guy, but we're all going through something. And
Well, you can't control your crazy either. Like, it's not like I said before we started rolling. Like, I would never choose to have gone through the psycho stuff that I have gone through because it's so much stuff that it does seem like a lie. At some point, it seems made up. And I sometimes wished it was like then I wouldn't have the baggage, right? Like you've got to deal with that. But also, I think at the time when people used to visit their families and decompress and talk to their parents and talk to their grandparents and talk to their aunts and uncles and see them, at lots of family functions, I think there was more decompression. And now I feel like everybody keeps to their self and everybody keeps everything in. And that's scary because what do we know about, psychological issues that go really overboard? Talk to anybody that was Ted Bundy's neighbor. They'll be like, he was the nicest guy ever. So you don't want that. Yeah.
do you think that your past is what inspired you to get into podcasting? Because there's got to be something that pushes you over the edge to say, okay, I gotta I
Yes.
gotta let it out. There's got to be an outlet.
So two things. God definitely told me I was going to do this. And I was like, I was much like your friends. I was like, there is no one in this world that is going to want to hear this bullshit. Like, this is crazy. Think again. It's probably one of the only times in my life where I've like distinctly disobeyed something for a minute. Like, it was a while. And I was like, no, that's weird. Why would I do that? No way. And then eventually I just sent a story to Josh Monday of Christian Conspiracy Podcast. And I was like, you should do a show on this random thing that I was learning about. And he's like, whoa, who are you? And why do you know all that stuff? Like, that's a lot. And I was like, here's the information. Go do it. And he's like, I can't do that show. Like, I don't know the things you're telling me. And I'm like, yeah, I'll send you my notes. And he's like, no. And I remember I was freaking out. I was like, Josh Monday sent me a voice message. I was like, oh my gosh, because I love podcasts. Like, even with my own podcast, I listen less than I used to, but I still listened to 49,000 hours of podcasts last year. So, like, I'm always listening. And it was probably double that when I didn't have my own podcast, because you have more time. And
Hmm.
so I'm like, okay, well, I'm always learning. I love to learn. I just hate things that are not in real life. Right. And so I was always like that in general. And then when my daughter, I told you today we would talk a little about her. She is my oldest child. And when she met her husband, I went from being her best friend on earth to a toxic, narcissistic, horrible person. So I was like, whoa, okay. And everybody's like, oh, it's a phase, it's gonna pass, all these things. And then it didn't. And it's been 5 years. She has blocked me. There's no contact. It is a hard line in the sand. Her husband met me 3 times. And after those 3 times, he voted that I was all of those things. And it pushed me over the edge. I have gone through so many other things that were probably quote unquote worse, I guess, like horrible catastrophes in my life, but like that one was just a lot. And so I got really close to God because I was like, I need some help here. Like, this is bad. I always believed in God. I always loved God, but this was extra, like just like absorbing everything God all day. Because I didn't want to be alive. And so I was like, I couldn't be dead because I don't believe in that. So, and also I have all these other kids but I was so sad. Like, I didn't want to do anything to myself. I just was so sad. I was just like, I can't function. And everything I talked about had to do with that. And it still does a lot of times. It's hard. Because she got married. I was sent an uninvitation to the marriage. Do not show up, you will be escorted out, like type of stuff. Yeah. And so then after that, she got pregnant, of course. She's had a baby I've never met. And it's been hard because like there's been some things where I could have been really the thing that she thinks I am, right? Like there were times that like she came here and my youngest daughter's only 10 at this time. She's 11 almost now, and it was just last summer, and she wanted to see my kids, my underage kids, right? The older kids, like whatever, but my husband was like, absolutely not. No, no way. Nope. And I was like, yeah, but then we're just as bad as she says we are then. And plus, they want to go see their sister. Like,
Sure.
what do you do with that? They miss her. And also like what if it reminds her of something good or whatever? Like I just was like more thoughtful about it because I'm like, I just don't want to cause more problems. Like this just seems stupid. This seems like a pissing match at this point, right? And so, yeah, I just didn't do that. We let him go. So,
That kind of deep suffering really brings about a change within you to a degree that spirituality is almost redefined.
yes.
You
Yep,
know, because you
everything
were saying that
changed.
you had that closer relationship with God. Do you think that that was like, how did that affect your spirituality? I know it brought you closer to God, but
Yeah.
what else happened to you?
So during that time, and I think the part of the reason why it was so hard on me, even though I was a ward of the court by 12. I'd been taken out of my home. I've been raised in abuse. My dad was in prison. Like, I've had this crazy life. I've had cancer already and survived. My brother passed away of an accidental drug overdose. My niece got taken away. Her mom died a year later by suicide. Like, it's just on and on. It is literally like, if I kept going, there'd be 20 more bad things, like, and it's just like, I've always had that. But to have that person that was so close to me, that we were like best friends, and I don't have a lot of friends, and so she and I leaned on each other. We did a lot of things together. And to have that, just like almost where she knew what she was going to do to me, like that purposeful meanness, I guess. Like, that was so mind-boggling to me because I could never.
You don't think that that
And
was
so,
her husband's influence, do you?
oh, 100%. I think it's 100% him. Two things about him. I was speaking at the table, a lot of my crazy conspiracy theories. I was going down a rabbit hole on masonry. His mom is a vice president of a bank, and they are members of the Lions Club. So I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I should shut my mouth.
Know your
Like,
audience, Heidi. Come on.
I know. I think I was just spun out on something and I was
Sure.
like blabbing. Yeah. And it was like not purposeful or to him or anything. But I do know this now that I'm more in the community. I've been around a lot of Masons at this point. I do a show with Paranoid American. Like, they're supposed to leave the room. And he did leave the dinner table twice during this conversation. And I didn't know that then. I didn't know that then. I wasn't as well versed as I am now. So makes me wonder, he is from Wisconsin, and like, it's Wisconsin's a weird state, man. Most of the serial killers are from Wisconsin. Like,
Really?
I,
I love
yeah,
Wisconsin. It's so beautiful and
yeah.
everybody's nice.
I mean, he was super nice, I thought. He is a pilot. He's very important. Just ask him. Um, I think I wasn't as impressed with him as he maybe wanted me to be because, like, I work with doctors, you know what I mean? I work with very prominent people all the time. And to me, if you take out the trash or you're a pilot, I really don't care. Like, if that, it's just not important to me, like, oh, that's cool. Like, it's a cool thing, but I'm not going to be like, let me kiss the ground you walk on because you're a pilot. Like,
Right.
okay, yeah. And so that was maybe a little off too. I don't think he loved that. And he came at my son's graduation. I was super busy. Like, I mean, like, we've got all these people and, we've got a big family. So my daughter's screaming. She's got uncontrolled ADHD. She's like running amok. It was just, yeah, it was a lot. But yeah, it did. It was hurtful to a point where I think I had to turn to God or I wouldn't have been okay. And when you do that, the only other time I can think of that really happened was with my brother dying. And it was just so mind-boggling to me because he's my younger brother, and like, I didn't expect that I would ever have to see him die. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and helped raise him. Like, yeah, it was just weird. But even then, you can accept it because death is very final, and you can say, well, they didn't choose that. He didn't choose to be gone. Like, this was an accident. It's horrible, but you eventually learn to accept it. Whereas she is here, she could choose to talk to me. She could come home. She knows I want it. I send messages sometimes, like, I really wished we could talk or whatever. And the reason why I know it's her husband is because one of the times that happened, um, after lightning struck their house. Yeah, that,
What did you pray for, Heidi? What did you pray?
Wow.
so
This was
I
you.
was
This was you.
I was sitting at the table. I know somebody called it Mormon lightning. Like, I'm not Mormon anymore. But we were sitting at the table and she had just come from having the C-section to home, and we were talking about, oh, the baby was born and da 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 da. And so all of that, and then all of a sudden I said, this just needs to stop now. And that was as mad as I got. That was it. And literally my mom's phone rings like that second of that whole talk, and she's screaming and crying, and all I can think of is a medical person like, oh my gosh, something is really terribly wrong, like maybe she's from the surgery or the baby, or I'm just freaking out. And so my mom chucks the phone to me, and I'm like, I'm not supposed to talk to her, like I'm trying to obey the boundaries that I've been given, but part of me was like, be that toxic narcissist and talk. But like,
Or be a
I
mom.
don't, yeah, right. And so I was like, hello, like, and I just told her, I love you. Moms never quit. Like you can quit me, but mom doesn't quit you. Like that doesn't go two ways. So, I don't know what you're doing right now, and I'm not going to ask because you just had a baby, but that's not going to happen here. And so uh, after that, the phone text message to my mom was intense from her husband. It was the nicest, do not ever do that again or you will be cut off, that I've ever seen. So, yeah.
Man,
Yep.
that's crazy. Do
Yeah.
they live nearby you?
No, I live clear in Utah. Yeah, they're back east. So,
Oh, are they in Wisconsin?
not anymore, but I just don't say where, but they're back east.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Just because I don't say their names, I try not to be a jerk. You know what I
Yeah, yeah.
mean?
Well,
Yeah.
I would say that every 7 years we totally regenerate and we're new people. So hopefully after that 7 years you get a new chance at it.
Well, and I kind of got to say my piece that day, which was nice enough because I got to say like this isn't permanent if you don't want it to be, right? Like I can't do anything else, and for me, that's really difficult because I'm a doer. I'm like a very person that's extremely driven, and I'm like usually the one people come to for fixing things or whatever, and so for me this is mind-boggling because I'm like, let's go to therapy, let's do this, let's do that, I'll do anything, like what do you want me to do? And it's just a hard no to everything. It's just door shut.
Well, and
That's
it's
so
not
weird.
it's not about you, it's about them, right? As long as
Yeah.
she knows in the back of her mind and she's heard you say it that she is always welcome back, that you're holding space for her to come back, that's all you can do. Because the second you start trying to butt up against those boundaries, you're resisting something that's not supposed to be, right? So
Right.
resistance enters, it creates more suffering. Like why deepen your suffering at that point?
Yeah, yeah. I think that it's just the acceptance of like for a while you hold on to hope because you do think like everybody says like, oh, it's just gonna be a time in their life or they're just newly married, give them, this space and it'll change. Or they say like every girl needs their mom when they're pregnant. Every girl needs their mom when they're getting married. When all of that kind of went out the door, you start to understand like, no, this is not, nothing's changing. And I did try, like when the baby was announced, like to send baby things and like a big, huge box, and it just made it so much worse, And I didn't even say like come home or like I tried to write a nice letter. The letter was horrible. Apparently, she never even got to read it because he scans her letters, and it was apparently deemed unworthy. And my sorry was not good enough. Yeah. So
I would
I
say
ha
one of the biggest themes of our show is coming to the realization of that everything is happening for us. And as many horrible things that have happened to you, do you have you been able to figure out, looking back on hindsight, figuring out why it happened for you?
Well, so many things I feel like I am in. I feel sometimes like Job, and I think that was part of what really got me through a lot of things because I would read the story of Job and I'm like, okay, he didn't do anything to deserve any of it, right? But he was being molded in the refiner's fire, if we want to do this. You know what I'm saying? Like he was forever changed. And people always say, well, Job was, fixed afterward and he got everything restored to him. And I'm like, no, he didn't though, because he got all his kids killed on the same day. And even if you have another child, it's not going to be the same one.
Not replacing,
So,
right?
yeah, you can't replace kids. And so I think a lot of things have been so out of my control because like parents that are in addiction and like getting taken from their home and having to deal with that. Like none of that stuff is like a kid's fault, or like my dad going to prison. Like you can't control anything. You're kind of being whipped around, but you also learn super bad behaviors because you're like, oh, my first husband, like you said, get married at 17 to a 25-year-old severely bipolar person that doesn't like to take his meds. Okay, so you think that that's normal. You're like, totally fine. Totally fine. Like, I get it. Yeah, you're just misunderstood. Like, drug addict, recovering alcoholic, like all this stuff. And you just think, like, oh, well, if you love them enough, you could fix it. Or if you do enough good things, you can change it. And you quickly realize, like, nope, that's not going to work. And then you have kids, and then what do you do? Like, and especially with the Mormon church, because now I'm married for time and all eternity. And no matter what he did, clear until he cheated on me, my family said, you stay. And so finally, when he did that, I was like, I don't care what you guys say. I'm out of here. I'm not sharing him with somebody else. That's crazy. But you can't control other people's behavior. You can only control yourself. And that sucks sometimes, really. Like, honestly, like now I've learned to control it much better. So truly, I'm a very impatient person.
And you're trying to figure out who to have around you and who not to.
Yeah.
And you don't have that wisdom when you're young. You have that wisdom later on because of these things.
Yes. Yep. And then you get so busy. Like, I think at like also you're so shrouded when you're in a cult. And I hate to say it, but that's what it is. As nice as Mormons can be, it's very culty, and they want you with their people in their like areas, their friends, their everything. Everything is your whole life is about the church. And so, when you're that controlled, you really don't have any autonomy to grow at all. Like you have no clue what you're doing. Like you just do what they say. And that's bad. Like that's so harmful in so many ways because you never learn what is dangerous, right? You're just like, oh yeah, that seems fun, totally fine. And it's
It's
not.
interesting though that some people do flourish with that. And then for us, the weirdos, we do not. And you find out
Yeah.
quickly who does and who doesn't, and who just puts their head down.
Structure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who puts their head down and just obeys.
And two different kids coming out of the almost same family, and I look at it all the time, and it isn't just two of us, but like I'm gonna tell you guys, and I haven't said this before, but like so my grandparents had four kids, and my grandparents got married. My grandma was pregnant at 13, so she got married at 14 because they tried to take him cross country. Like they were like, oh, that's nice, bye. And they took my grandpa away, and he ran away 32 times until he got back to Utah and to my grandma, and their kid was like 1 by then, and he was 16, and he said, I will dig ditches for you, we will make this work. And he did. He dug ditches, and they were dirt poor, and they were married till the day they died. They made it, but it was a very harmful, chaotic adolescent children raising babies. They had four kids before 20.
Wow.
And so, yeah, and there was no, yeah, well, because there was no effective control at that point. And so he's like, his joke was, I used to hang my pants on the bed and she'd get pregnant. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But he was fun. And he was the biggest child my grandma ever raised. She always told us that. It was super funny, but he was great. But he was like a complete juvenile delinquent. He was always in trouble. And so I loved him, but he could be the meanest person you'd ever met if he was drinking, or fighting. Like he liked to fight a lot. And so you see a lot of things that are like bad, and you don't fully comprehend, like, this is not how we handle this stuff. And then we got grandma who's like super religious, and she's so passive aggressive. And then so you're like, what is happening here? So you never learn to like be balanced. And I think that's been something that I've had to learn through all of the heartache, all of the problems, all of the things, and to rest. Like I always think of that scripture when it says, you make me lie down in green pastures. People always put that toward death, but it really isn't. It's more about submission to God, really, if you read it again. It's more about like, look, I am doing something to you to help you rest, and you won't rest. So now, and I'm not saying God punishes us, but like, I felt like God was like, you're still not getting it. So now you have cancer and you have to rest. Right? Like now you're sick. How do you like? And I still was like, no, I'm not going to rest. And I kept doing this weird stuff until like almost my body just was gonna give out on me completely. Like and I was like a little mental, like honestly, from the radiation and not sleeping and like everything. I had like weird radiation, they call it like dementia, radiation dementia, because you get really weird. And I was super freaking mean. I was so mean. But I don't remember any of this, but I do know what happened. People tell me. But like it wasn't in my nature. And I was like, why is this coming out? Right? Like it's like all your inner demons, like I guess your inner work, you know? Like you have to do it. Like maybe the occultists have a little something there, right? Like I'm not trying to promote them or anything, but like it's a good idea to face your demons. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah. All that stuff has definitely forged me into a different human being. That is for sure. Yeah. If
What do
you
you got?
only knew in your 40s, right?
I don't know. That's a lot. That's a lot. To
Yeah,
process all of this stuff. I
it
mean,
is.
you seem, I had never met you before. Today's my first time meeting you, and your energy is so powerful and light, So what you have gone through has really brought you to this remarkable place. And it's thank God you're podcasting because we cannot get this information from the news anymore. Like we cannot, like podcasting is becoming our way of getting around a digital campfire and sharing stories and learning from each other.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I think that is really important. And I do think that's why God was like, so back to the story about God, I was like, think again, chump. And he was like, you think again. And we did this little mental thing. And then the Josh Monday thing happened in the middle of it. And I was like, how random that he would even send me a message, right? Like maybe I really am supposed to do this. And I prayed and prayed and prayed a lot about this. And I was like, dude, I only know like 4 people and 3 don't really like me. So I just don't know what you want me to do. Nobody's going to listen to this. I was literally like, I didn't even know how to download a show. I didn't. I cried my first 6 shows. I didn't know how to export. I am old. I'm 48, almost 49. I didn't know how to do that. You know, I'm self-taught on everything I've done. And it was just like it was almost like I knew it would be okay. And it is. And it's weird. And thousands of people listen now. And I'm like, that's so weird to me. But
It is
yeah.
interesting. I mean, we were doing Firmamental for a long time before we started this show. But when we started to do this show, I had to learn how to produce everything. And I basically, well, Katya heard me basically screaming for about 3 full days as I'm just bashing my head, doing everything wrong. I put the cart before the horse, basically set everything up, no episodes. I'm like, okay, our podcast is on, but we don't have any episodes. And then it's like, okay, crap. Now we gotta do all these things. But yeah, it's funny. I was even thinking this today. It's like, I hope that everybody just listens to the newest episode and goes backwards instead of hearing the first one and then just cringing and never wanting to listen ever again.
Yeah, I
Because
get
you're
that.
learning how to walk from crawling.
Yeah, it's true. Like think of like all of the things like as simple as an intro or like the short clips. They take like 3 hours, you guys. Like that little 1 minute thing that you watch, somebody has created for hours, absolutely hours to get it to hit in the right spot. Well, if you're a weirdo, I mean, I'm a little OCD, so
I'll show you how to do it
my
in 2
mine
seconds.
take long. Well, I have the thing where it does it for me, but I'm too crazy. Like I'm super OCD and that's why I'm a good nurse, cuz like I'm going to check it 32 times and make sure I don't kill anyone. Like when your job is that, you get really kind of neurotic, because you're like, "Oh my gosh." And people are always like, "You're so bossy." And I'm like, "I am literally a boss everywhere I go. I am the boss over my family. I am the boss at work. Yes, I am bossy. Yep, I am. And that's why I don't work with anybody else on the podcast because I'd probably drive them crazy.
So if it was Lord of the Flies and you were on the island, you'd be like taking charge immediately.
I mean, they'd probably kill me second. So
Spoiler alert.
I would follow her because you have presence. Like you have command over the moment. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna hitch my wagon to her.
Yep.
Well, that's good. Good to hear. Because sometimes I'm like, I think I'm just annoying, and I never know because you have to mix it in with like, I have this morbid, like, kind of way to deal with things. I'm like, and haha, I almost died, but I didn't. Like, and people don't know what to do with that. They're like, are you being serious right now? And I'm like, yeah. But like, well, okay, you can either laugh or you can cry. Like, honestly, like, and I'm not saying it didn't happen. And I'm not saying I wasn't sad when it was happening. And I wasn't all smiles while I was doing my stuff. And, when I got my neck slit open, like, I mean, come on, that's crazy, and you do the so sorry for me, but you can only do that for so long. I mean, I don't know. I'm just the kind of person that's always been like, and we get back up again. Like, I don't know if that's just Mormon pioneer blood or what the hell's wrong with me, but something.
Yeah, you don't have a choice. You just gotta do it, right?
Well, yeah, what are you gonna stay at home and cry about it? Like for a while. Yeah, that's appropriate for a while.
Right. I didn't know that you were a nurse. Are you like an ER nurse or like what kind of nurse?
So I was an ER nurse, good pin for years and years and years so I've been a nurse for 25 years now. So not only did I have kids early, I went to school early because I saw my mom in a very abusive pattern in my life. And her one thing that she didn't have was a career. So I watched her stay with the same guy beating the total shit out of all of us for enough time that honestly, I was like, that is never going to be me. And even though I felt bad for her, I was like, you are not doing it right. Like, even I was probably 9 and like, what are you doing? Let's go. Like, I mean, so I was definitely the center for the next one that gets abused because I wasn't his kid. And also I was a smart ass like that. So I was just like, oh, you like to beat women because you're pathetic. Like, I mean, I've always been this way. And I knew that there was punishment for those things, but I just didn't care. I was like, and and I think he just got kind of tired of it because he was like, she's not as fun to beat. Like she's not fun. I'm just like, whatever, you're a loser. Because like and I knew I was gonna be successful. And so I got my career, even though I was married, had a bunch of kids coming at me all different ways because my husband had a child. And when we got married, she lived back east, but her mom had a stroke within the year. And so at 18, I became a stepmom full time of a 5-year-old. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm not even old enough to be your mom. Like literally. I was like, I mean, 12, yeah, maybe something like that when she was born. And so she lived with us until we got divorced. I mean, I was her mom. And then my kids started coming and then my cousin got in trouble. And so, because I didn't finish about my crazy grandparents, and all the cousins are just messed up. Like my husband's like, your family is a walking Jerry Springer show. I'm like, no, I know. But 14-year-olds were raising them. So what do you want me to say? But they're all like on drugs and like super messed up. And there's only 2 of us that I know of out of all of the kids. And they all had at least 2. So that either haven't died of overdoses or like they're all just horrible, like homeless. Like it's just bad. It's so bad. And I think education was part of the key for me. And being in that horrible situation, like even though it's horrible, like it taught me like if maybe I wouldn't have made it if I had a cushy, good childhood. Like maybe I wouldn't have seen like, hey, you don't want to marry a loser like that. Like don't do that. And you don't want to put up with crap and stay anyways. And you don't want to not have a career. Right. So I became a nurse and I loved it so much. I never thought I would do that. I was going to be an attorney my whole life. And then I found out they have to lie a lot. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so bad at lying. Like, I don't think I can do that. And so I lettered in debate and everything. I was a big, huge nerd. And so, I went to college for that and I loved it. Did that until I did labor and delivery for a while. That is not for me. I can deliver a baby and I don't mind that part of the job. The nurses that work in that department hate me because I'm a guy's girl. And when you're the guy's girl and you don't look like the guy's girl, it's not good. So they just think you're like a flirt or you're like trying to make out with everybody or something weird, right? And I don't even think like that. I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking? Like, that's crazy to me. Like, I'm always like, what are you? What? And people are like, oh, it's because you're flirty. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it just doesn't dawn on me. So didn't make friends in that department. And the doctors loved me, the nurses didn't. And so then I busted my back, and that was about 2 years ago, and I almost died again. I'm super ineffective at it. I
Wait,
never
you
die.
busted your back. Were you delivering a baby?
So in the ER, you are doing so much lifting and stuff. I think I actually probably herniated it at some point and didn't know. And then we just went camping for a week, and we have a trailer and everything, like with a really nice bed and all the things. And I knew I had bulging discs, but when I got home, I went to bed. I didn't do anything. It's not even a cool story. I just went to bed and I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't move. And I'm like, it's so bad. And I kept thinking, like, I pulled a muscle. And then I was trying to power through it and I couldn't. And I kept scaring the dog because I would intermittently scream. So it was just stupid. And I waited for 2 days laying on the floor, hoping it would stop. And my husband's like, I have to go to work. You're hysterical. Maybe you should let me take you to the doctor. Like, and I wouldn't let him. I was like, this is gonna stop. Just ibuprofen and ice. And he's like, okay. So he leaves me, goes to work because he knows it's not gonna change because I'm stubborn like that. And he's like, I don't know what else to do for you. So he's gone. And he comes back, and when he got home from work, I was like, I'm dying. So we go to the hospital. I had to have surgery. I actually fractured my disc completely, and it extravated into my sciatic nerve.
Oof.
So this, in my ex-husband's words, he said, only you could break your back like that. I'm like, right.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That's kind of
So
familiar for you, huh?
Hmm.
it's the worst. And so they had to go in and get it out and all the things. And I had a lot of ectomies and laminectomies, and I don't know. There was discectomy, laminotomy, something else. I don't know. They did a whole bunch of stuff in there, and L5 through S1. And then I told him I was severely, deathly allergic to the glue, and they decided to glue it, and I got the most sick I think I've ever been in my life. And I got spinal, I had complete infection everywhere in my spinal cord.
Oh my God.
So by the time he listened to me, because I was like, it's clearly infected, like I was raising alarm day two because I'm like, this is not okay. And he was like, no, I think it's just a reaction because I have terrible asthma and all these allergies, like EpiPen, try to die all the time. And I'm like, why would you even do this to me? Like, why do this experiment on a normal human? Obviously, I'm a little alien DNA. I don't know, but it's not going to work. So he gave me prednisone, tanked me even further. I think my CRP was 12 when I got to the hospital. I almost died. I was devastatingly sick. 1,200 cc's of infection was in my spinal cord.
Oh my God.
Um, yeah, it looked like I was pregnant back there. There was like a big, huge, and it was like purple.
If it was
Uh,
Canada, you would be
You would have
dead.
died in
They
Canada.
would be like,
oh,
we'll wait about 9 months and then we'll see what we can do there.
yeah, it wouldn't have waited because I was screaming. It was the worst pain I've ever been in, except for when I had my second daughter at home. So I was like, I know what a level 9 is, and this is it, buddies. Like, I'm going nowhere. And they're like, we're going to discharge you. And I literally said, I'm not leaving. You can call the police. I know my rights. I'm a registered nurse. And so they were like, this lady, oh, she's coming in hot. I was like, I will call an attorney. And so they were like, uh-oh. So they just chucked me in a bed for the weekend because he didn't want to come in because it was the weekend. And finally, on Monday, he was like, oh my hell, you have osteomyelitis of the spine. Oh my gosh. So yeah, it was super bad. I had a PICC line for 3 months, 24 hours a day, continuous, never came off with antibiotics. Thank heavens I am a nurse, because if I had to have somebody up in my face like that all the day, I'd have been so annoyed. I just did everything myself. I even taught myself to change my bandage left-handed. It was fine.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, I'm very
So you're like a
self-reliant.
cat. So how many lives do you think you have left?
Well, I almost spent another one this year in the summer. I did have a allergic reaction so bad that I really thought that was the time. I thought that one, and I didn't do anything. I was asleep, and I woke up, and it was all red, and I thought, when you're not awake and you're like, that's not real. Like what? That's not real. And then I was like, oh shit, it's my throat. Oh no. And so I like tried to make it to the EpiPen, and I made it, and I jammed it in, and nothing happened. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is how it goes. So
That's
stupid.
it.
Not even a cool story. Yeah, I didn't eat anything. And so my husband's asleep. It's 6 a.m. And I'm like, I can't even talk. Like, so eventually I made enough noise that he was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, call 911. I'm trying to do, he's like, you want me to call 911? And I'm like, yes. And he's like, you always tell me not to call nine. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die because I've told him to never call 911. And they're right across the street. And he's like, oh, okay. So they did come, and they were so scared that they were like, oh, we don't even know what to do with you. Like, and they started giving me all this IV Benadryl, and then the hives. As soon as they gave me the Benadryl, they could see that the full redness was hives, because the hives finally had enough white skin in between that they were like, these are all hives. Oh my gosh, she doesn't have rosacea. She is the hive. I was the hive.
That's
But
crazy.
then, yeah, yeah. Then I had a meltdown because they took me to the hospital my brother died at. So it was just a whole thing. But like, I made it. You know what? Operation Red Pill. I was an hour late, but I made it to that podcast. Don't worry about it.
Oh my God.
Where to unpack? Where to unpack?
Oh, I mean, they gave me IV steroids and stuff. That's fine.
Did she say if she went back? Did you go back to nursing?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And so,
She's still a nurse.
okay. So, but I couldn't do what I did anymore because I couldn't lift people anymore. It was lame. So now I am a mental health professional, and I am a mental health nurse, inpatient lockdown. And most of the time I deal with drug addiction, which is fine with me because my little brother died of drug addiction. And so I get it. And I don't treat them like scum because they're not. They're people's brothers and moms and dads and
They
kids.
just want to be seen and witnessed, and they want to have a safe space to be able to talk about it. Like,
Yep.
there's so
Yep.
much healing and lessening of suffering if you can talk it through.
Yes. And not stigmatize it, right? Like don't stigmatize people just because they can't do what you can do, which I
Who,
did to my
who is
brother a
anybody
lot.
to bring judgment into
Yeah.
another person's suffering, right? I mean, you're
Hmm.
completely useless as a tool, as another human then. There is no room
Yeah.
for judgment.
Yep. That's what I always tell the other nurses that are kind of not as nice as they maybe should be sometimes. And I'm like, if you are cruel to someone on their worst day ever, you are some kind of human.
Right?
And I just say that and go because I just don't have patience for it. But the patients relate to me and I relate to them. What that says about me, I don't know. But like, it's great. It's fine.
Wisdom. It says wisdom.
Yeah.
It says you've been through the ringer. You have experienced so much, right? So
Yeah. When they tell me stuff, I'm like, yeah, I totally get it.
if I was in a crisis situation, I would want you as my nurse. I have
Oh.
been in a situation where my nurses have not even looked me in the eye and just they come in, they come out, they come in, they come out. And it's not until somebody looks at you and says, I see you. I understand that
Hmm.
your suffering is not like anybody else's suffering. It's such a personal
Yep.
thing that even if we have the same diagnosis, my suffering is still different because it's unique to me, right? So
Yes.
being
Yep.
seen is such a big part of healing.
Well, I think the best job that ever prepared me for being a good nurse, not just a nurse, but a good nurse, is actually a waitress. I waitressed for like 2 years while I was going to school, and actually, it makes you watch things. It makes you be like, oh, they need another Coke. Oh, they need this. Oh, and you're there before they ask you. So if I see somebody kind of not comfortable, I just bring the blanket. I don't ask about the blanket. Like I just bring the blanket because if they don't want it, then what does it matter to you? Who cares? Then
Yep.
they don't want it. Yeah. So try and be empathetic and, try and like understand from their perspective, like what is happening to them that day.
Yeah, I'm sad about the lack of empathy in a lot of medical institutions.
Hmm.
I feel like
Especially mental health. Yeah.
Right? Oh, especially mental health. I think that if you walked into a hospital and were met with expertise and empathy, then the healing rate would be so much better.
Well, people would stop lying. That's a big contribution to what killed my brother is he just lied because he didn't want to tell them the truth that he took in Xanax that day and the medication that they prescribed him, which was what he actually took. He didn't die of his drug of choice at all. He wasn't taking that. He died because they gave him sleeping pills that interacted with the Xanax he took and he never woke up because he already had a heart problem and he had really bad sleep apnea. And so, if he was comfortable enough to tell them, yeah, I took some Xanax that wasn't mine, maybe this would be a different situation,
Right, yeah.
but he didn't. So,
Oh, it's so
and
crazy. And all these medicines, mixing them together, I don't even know how doctors do their jobs anymore because you have this, which causes all these things, and then you take this to try and mask those things, but it's this layered effect, and they don't all play well together. How do you not have a bunch of dead bodies everywhere?
it's so hard too, because like I get it, like medication wise. Okay, there's times and places and everything. Like I'm not against medicine, but I also have a knowledge of I have a knowledge other people don't have, just like the whole thing at the hospital, right? I knew what was happening. What would have happened to somebody that didn't know what was happening? Would they have gone home and died? I mean, and so that is the scary part that we have to educate ourselves and be the best we can be and be as honest as we can be. Because if you don't know, you're definitely going to want the doctor to know. Like, I don't care if you dropped a line of Coke today. I need to know that. We're not the police. I don't care.
Well, and
I
definitely in
don't care
Canada,
what
you
you're
have to
doing.
advocate for yourself so loudly because they barely listen.
Mm.
Have to be your own advocate.
Well, and you don't get that much time. You have about 10 seconds to tell me what your problem is before I decide which room and which doctor or which nurse. Like, you have no time.
Oh,
It was
geez.
crazy because he was doing jujitsu and picked up some kind of what was that?
It was some kind of weird herpes rash thing.
It was so bizarre, but and he had it all here on his, and so while I'm snuggling, it went
Oh,
up my
no.
damn nose. And so I have this infection in my nose. And here's the thing about your nose is that it's constantly moist. Like you
Yep.
can't actually, you can't take care of it properly. So by the time I got to the hospital, I'm just sitting in this room. It took 3 hours for someone even just to come look at me. And then it was this doctor who was not fully a doctor, and he's kind of going, did you get the COVID vaccine? What the hell does the COVID vaccine have to do with my fucking nose? I lost it. I just started crying. And then the senior doctor came in. She's like, I don't understand why you're crying. I'm like, really? Because at this point, just shave my nose off my face because it hurts so bad. Take it off.
Oh my
And it was in
gosh.
that moment where she's like, oh, something's actually wrong here.
Oh,
Okay,
you're like,
so
yeah, I know.
try and beg you to take my nose off my face before I get help.
Oh my gosh. And people always say, like, okay, socialized medicine is better. But I'm like, I just don't think any of it is great because one way or another, either they're charging an arm and a leg and doing crazy stuff in America, or they're not listening at all. And I'm like, which way do you want it? And on top of that, like, it's dangerous. Like, sometimes you really just need that intervention, like I needed that second day of my surgery, which I told him what I needed. I literally told him and I threw a fit and I was seen in the office because I threw a fit and he still blew it off and he sent his little crony in. Yeah, his PA or something. And I'm like, you missed a very important thing and caused me all this trauma. But since I signed the paperwork, you don't have to do anything about it. Right.
Crazy.
Like he gets to go live his life.
I
My
actually
life is
think
destroyed.
I actually
Yeah.
think going to the veterinarian would be the best. You make your appointment, you go in there, they
Yeah.
run a bunch of tests, you pay whatever money. If you have insurance, great. It's kind of it's a private clinic, and then you just get whatever you need. You're not waiting. You're not. To me, the vet is where it's at. If
And
I
if
got
it's
sick, I
not
would go
worth
to
it
the
to
vet.
heal me, they can just put you to sleep.
Exactly. Just put me
Yeah, there you
down.
go. I'd have been put down for sure.
Oh, this Heidi Love. Meh. No.
They're like, she just keeps coming back. I know my one friend's like, you are nothing if not resilient. I'm like, yeah, that's for sure.
Right?
And
Like you are a full-blown warrior.
well, my name does mean battle maiden. Heidi means battle maiden,
Oh
so
wow.
See,
it's kind of funny. Yeah.
So
My grandpa, me laughed at that one. I don't think my parents knew that. They just liked the movie. Oh.
I think that as we like kind of try and wrap this whole beautiful experience up, I think with age and being this beautiful warrior that you are, and the wisdom that comes with that is you have to make time for rest. You did allude to that
Yes.
before. Like there has to be an equal amount of time for rest. So what do you do to rest?
So I think more now, well, rest to me is a little bit different. Instead of just always doing housework or all the things, there's always something that needs to be done, especially when you have a lot of kids. You could justify not doing anything for yourself ever again and just say, well, I have to do all of this because, this is how it is. Like I'm so busy, blah, blah, blah. But now I do the gym and now I can't even do weights or anything, right? Or like the things I used to do because I'm hurt, but I didn't stop going. What I do now is like stretching, mobility stuff to help me, and it's so much better when I go. And then, I do sit down more. I do, put my feet up more. I bought an old person bed. I did that. I bought a
What does
freaking
that mean? Is that one of those beds that like goes up and down? You know
I
what?
did
That is not
that.
an old person bed. That's just like, yes, I want that.
That's a Kama Sutra bed in the waiting.
Yeah. I'm like, my daughter said the same thing. She goes, "Does that make you feel old?" I'm like, "Yep." And I mean, but like also, rest to me means a lot of different things too now, like not just resting like my body, right? Like on Saturdays, every Saturday we have my grandson and we don't care what they're doing. They don't have to be working or anything. Like just drop the baby off and go. And so every Saturday we get him and that is rest to me because like I just get to play with him. Like there's no, I mean, yeah, it's work. He's 9 months old and he's crawling around and doing stuff, but everything he does is just perfect. Like, and the mom's always like, he might be fussy today. My daughter-in-law's so cute. And I'm like, yeah, I just don't care. He just, whatever he does is perfect. Like he's perfect. Yeah.
It's like Jolly Jumper age.
Yeah.
Jolly
Yeah. I'm
Jumper
like,
age
he's
is the best.
cute. Yeah. He's the cutest thing ever. We've done it since he was barely born. And so I'm like, I just love that. Like that kind of like, she's always like, you can put him down. She literally felt bad and brought us a pack and play crib because I would always send her pictures of me like holding him asleep on my chest. And I'm like, I'm not putting him down. I don't know what universe you're living in, but if he's sleeping, I'm sitting here like until he's awake. And she's like, okay. And I know she thinks I'm a little crazy, but I'm like, I don't get baby stuff anymore. So
Right?
cute.
She'll get it one day.
I mean, that's a valid point that rest is what your body is actually needing in order to rejuvenate and recharge and replenish.
Yes.
So if that is spending time on your hands and knees with a baby, then that's your rest.
Yes, and reading the scriptures, like I do journal. I think journaling was really helpful me, especially like you said, like we don't have a lot of people to talk to or whatever. Like obviously podcasting is like it's kind of my therapy in a way. And like I always bring God into it because that was the whole point of me doing this was like, hey, Unfiltered Rise is called Unfiltered. That's your morning. Rise is you can rise above anything. If I can do what I did with my life, you can too. And I don't care how old you are. You can start tomorrow. Like you could be 70 and have a new day tomorrow. Like it's not just over. I mean, I've had so many bad things happen and people make me honestly almost think me and my daughter were just talking about this because I have OCD tendencies is what I'm diagnosed with, but not the true like where you can't stop washing your hands. But the thought process when you get called like, oh, you're a toxic narcissist, that goes through my head 1,000 times a day. And finally, one of the doctors at my work, a psychiatrist, he was like, Heidi, he overheard me talking to somebody and he's passed away now. He was so great. He goes, I'm going to tell you something today and I shouldn't give you medical advice, but I'm going to because I hear you talk about this a lot. I said, what's that? And he goes, a toxic narcissist would never worry if they were a toxic narcissist or not. And I
Checkmate.
was like, oh, right. And I knew that. Like, I know that I'm smart and I have all this training. But ultimately, if somebody does something like that to you and you do have patterns that repeat in your head, you do that all day long. You do that all day long. And that's something where I think people do go into addiction, instead of let's deal with this and journal and talk to God. Like, I just don't want to deal with this. So I'm going to have a drink, or I'm going to do this. Like that's the difference. And I look at my brother and my life, and both of us became super achievers. He went in the military and he was a super achiever, but he needed that structure, like what you said about the church earlier. And he thrived, right? He thrived in like a military type situation. And as soon as he got out, that's when everything went bad. Like everything fell apart. Whereas me, I'm more of a buck the system person. I'm like, screw that. I'm not doing that. Like when they came out with all the shots, I was like, yeah, I'll just quit my job. I don't care. Like I'm good. Like I'll live in a camper. My husband was never so happy. I'm a tent camper normally. This was before my back went. And I was like, you can buy a camper. And he was like, what? And I'm like, well, we might have to live in it. But I mean, I made go bags. The whole deal. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm like, no, I'm not doing any of that. No way. Because it didn't make sense. Not because I'm just anti that. Like I have had all the other things. Okay. I'm a nurse. Like except the annual one.
The
I
flu
don't do the
shot,
flu.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what I can say on your show. Okay. So I don't do the flu shot because I have a bad immune system anyway, and I don't think that's a good idea. So I'm just like, meh, I'm not doing that anymore. And you know what? Since I quit, because you used to have to do it at the regular hospital, but I can opt out now because of my issues. See, God saves me in the weirdest ways. Um, they're like, yeah, she might die. So my doctor wrote that she might die, and I got to go back to work. So, both shots, and they were like, yeah, serious. Oh, sad for you. And I'm like, sad for you.
Right?
And now people are like, oh, crazy. But like all these things that you think are bad in the moment, sometimes they're not,
Right.
right? Like that's the point. I mean, like me sharing embarrassing things or my most horrible moments on here is not the end of my world. It's not. I don't care. If it helps somebody else and you can see that you can pick up from today and move forward past whatever somebody did to you. And you know what? My parents, my mom that kept me in an abusive situation all that time, and I had a lot of issues with my mom for 2 years. I didn't talk to my mom. And now that I know what that is, I will never do that again. Ever, ever, ever. And I don't care how mad I am. You can take time. You can take a time out. You can take a break. You need to communicate with that person and tell them, I'm not leaving forever, but I need a break today. And that's what I do with her now because I'm like, no, that's so unfair after going through it myself. And it's healed a ton of things. Like I may never understand her because I am the Alex P. Keaton of my family. And they are all like the hippies, right? And I'm just like, oh, I don't get it. But I at least can be good to her, I guess. Yeah.
I think that well, I want you to get ready for that for the question for her, but I think that that's so fascinating to me because one of our biggest complaints is that our families are so small, and when there's a little bit of dysfunction, it rocks everything because the family is so small. And it's interesting to hear about how big your family is and how it's not just a little bit. There seems to be quite a
Oh,
bit,
oh, it's,
and
yeah.
and that's sad, right? Because I feel like if you had a good, healthy matriarch and patriarch, heads of the family, they would help, obviously have, basically normalized things. And if there's like a little ripple here or a ripple here, they'll be dealt with
Hmm.
accordingly. Or the worst case scenario, maybe there's two rifts that can be healed. But if it's top down, bearing all this crazy fruit, that's a very challenging thing to grow up in and
Well,
and end
and
up
they're all
being.
passed away. Yeah. And they've all died. Like my
Yeah.
dad died, my grandpa died, my grandma died. Like they're all gone and they died early. Like my dad was only in his 60s. And I think it did help when they were alive to like help um like fix the little things like you're saying. Cause like I didn't get raised with my brother or sister, and my dad always kind of kept that connection there because I'm not their mom's child, but they are real brother and sister. As soon as my dad died, never again. They could care less if I'm alive or dead. But when my dad was alive, he did. He kept, it's just like you're saying, he kind of kept that thread together. And I don't see that in families anymore. Like I don't. And it's sad because I remember going to my great grandma's every week and like people would help her and she never had to shovel her own snow and stuff. Like all that was taken care of for the older people. And now that is not even a thought sometimes. And I get mad at my husband's family because they have a big family and people are still alive. And I'm like, why is your 75-year-old dad shoveling snow? Like there's so many kids. We all have a bunch of kids. What is happening? And I'm like, he's gonna break his hip or something, like you said. Like it's from the top down. You want to take care of those elders, I think it's really important.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say for my family, my grandfather dying, my dad's dad, and then my mom dying, I don't know. I feel like my family's just blowing in the wind right now because
It's hard.
I'm gone. I'm not even there. So there's no way that I could be the next in line to try and,
Right.
or because I mean, naturally, I would probably be that
I
person.
think so. You're very grounding anyway, and I think that every family needs that anchor, right? It's anchor energy that helps everybody else have safe space to deal with things.
Yeah.
Right. I
But
think that's
we're
so
the only ones
true.
out here. So, I mean,
It's hard. Yeah.
yeah, when our kids have kids, I'll be that guy. I'll be that.
Oh, it's the best thing ever. Just wait. It's like the best thing ever. It's
I told them
so
both, you
fun.
got to have at least 4 kids each. So,
It's so fun. It's great. I mean, like we've got a lot of kids and like I said, my youngest is just barely going to turn 11 soon. And so it is kind of funny because like we've got an almost 30-year-old and then like 11. She was a surprise. Um but like it's been, when you're the parent, you're the heavy, you have to make sure they're going to grow up and be good and stuff. And when you're the grandparent, like you have to give the advice a little bit, but not always. You got to be the fun one that takes them for ice cream.
sure, yeah.
And it's
And
fun.
love the
Yeah.
hell out of them.
Oh, that baby lacks for nothing. She even told me the other day, the baby's 9 months old, and my daughter-in-law said, I still haven't bought him one thing between all of you. I'm like, good. I'm
That's
like, that's
really
good.
lovely.
Yeah.
That's the way
I'm
it
like,
should.
it should be. Yeah. And the grandparents really do need to be more involved. I see this whole thing now where like grandmama, she's busy and she's got to get her nails done. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm busy too, but that is something that you have no idea what you're missing out on. And it's
Right? And
so important.
it's a short
Yeah.
window. They
It's a
need you
short
for
window.
such a small amount, and you're so magical for that small amount. Like,
Yeah. Even my grandpa, as messy as he was, like, yeah, he got arrested at 60, like right before he died, like for fighting on the side of the road. But he was from Chicago. Like some things about him you're not gonna change. And even me seeing some of the crazy stuff he did helped me not be crazy. I was like, I'm not ever gonna go to jail. That seems like a bad idea. But like you learn from them. But even as messy as he was my favorite person in the world. I
right?
mean, that is his name tattooed on my wrist.
Aw.
Like, I love him. And I mean, I can't tell you how much I miss him. And he died really abruptly. And so it was like, oh, geez. And I think that was about the point where my family really started falling apart, like you
Yeah.
said. Really? Because my grandpa would call people out and they didn't like it. He was just like I am, but I get in more trouble because they're like, you're toxic. That's toxic behavior now. But
Oh,
my grandpa, he could do what he wanted. He's old enough. People don't get mad at the old people. They're like,
right?
they're senile.
Well, especially if you carry yourself in a certain way,
Ah,
people know,
yeah.
like energetically, people know when you carry yourself in a certain way who you can mess with and who you can't.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think they just listen more because they're like, well, he's old. You don't know. Even if I do know, like it doesn't matter. You
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
you don't know, like grandpa knows. So it is. So people out there, you know, try and I think the best advice I can give is be forgiving and don't hold grudges against people unless it is absolutely something unforgivable, like unforgivable. And even then, try and resolve it in a safe place, in a safe manner, so that person also, if they've changed, if they didn't change, I don't know about that, but try and resolve it and so you're free because even if you say you're free, you're not free unless you've worked it out, right? Like it could be the worst thing ever. It could be the most horrific thing ever because I've had that. I've faced that right to somebody's face, you know. And leave the door open because maybe they are not going to be the same person in 7 years or 7 months, you know? Like people do change. Don't just lock people out of your life. Give them boundaries, but don't expect them to know what they are. If you have a certain boundary and this is like something that's important to you, like, okay, then say that. You know, say you are not allowed to talk in my marriage about this or whatever, you know, like that's fine. But don't lead me into the conversation. Oh, mom, I need help. Mom, I need help. Mom, I need help. And then call me toxic.
Right.
That's not fair, you
Right.
know? So make clear boundaries and don't give up on people. And, you know, even if they don't change, you can change how you react to them. You can say, you know what, mom, I need a day away. I will talk to you tomorrow. And you can end that conversation like you're a big kid. You don't have to end it forever, you know, just
Yeah.
go away. Yeah, for that day, maybe you're having a bad day or something. Who knows? And don't let little things become huge things, like some little misunderstanding and you never talk about it again. Don't do
Right.
that. Yeah. I'm very abrupt and people don't like that, but I mean, at least you know where you stand, you
Right.
know?
I mean, and that's exactly it. You are wise beyond your years. And in
Thank
that
you.
vein, I have a question for you. So we usually ask our guests to leave a question for the next guest. So our last
Ooh.
guest wants to know, how many hours a week do you spend outside?
Oh man, depends on the weather, right? It's freezing here right now. It's so cold right now, but in the spring and fall, probably upwards of 5, I would say.
That's a good
Just because
amount.
we like to be outside and in the summertime like we go camping for days and days and days. So like we like it. But also like in the middle dead of winter, no way. I'm not doing that.
Do you notice that you are missing something by not being in nature in the dead of winter?
Yeah, I think it's sad. Like the other day, we finally got a sunny day, and the first thing I'm gonna do is open my sunroof, like, and let the sun come in. And even if it's cold, not like open, but the window pane, you know,
Right.
or whatever to make things light feeling. I guess I try to do. I think I'm more researchy, journally in the winter, like projects, like crochet. I crochet because I'm an old lady. Whatever. I have my Tempur-Pedic bed and my crochet, but
That sounds so hot.
but like all of that stuff, you know, I just try to keep busy. But it is cold here in the winter, unfortunately, especially right
Preaching to the
now.
choir.
Except
Yeah.
for today,
Yep.
it's nice and warm
We're
today.
having an
It is
oddly
nice
warm day.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice here, but it's cold, but it's sunny at least.
We
So,
probably have like 45.
oh, that's not bad. We've had a
Really
cold
good.
front.
Very
Yeah.
good for here.
I'm not complaining. But now, before we let you go, you have to leave a question for the next
Oh.
guest. And since you're a professional podcaster, that should be an easy feat.
Are they normies? Are they normal people?
Most people are normal, yes.
I'm gonna do a conspiratory question then.
Oh, good.
What is the biggest conspiracy you believe?
Oh, I love that.
Right?
Finally, a little bit of crossover.
Yay!
It is so wild walking amongst the non-conspiracy people and being as wise as I am now, not just vomiting everything on everyone, but it's just so interesting finding out what people believe
It's
and
true.
not,
You know
and not
what?
judging
Yeah.
them for it.
The judgment, because I went to dinner with his family the other day and they're all on like their 72nd booster and everything. And they'd like to tell me about it, right? Because they know I don't like it. And so they want to tell me about it. And I used to be like, you know, that's not a good idea, right? Or whatever. And as they're all talking about their weight loss shots and all these things they're doing, and my eyes are like popping out of my head. Okay. They're like, and I told my husband, I'm like, your family is going to get so sick. Like, this is so scary. And I used to be like, say, you know, it is my job to save people.
Yeah.
It's really hard to shut up when you're like, this is dangerous.
Right.
Really. I mean, I'm fat. I would love to lose some weight. Like, but my fat ass will stay the same before I go on that. That is dangerous. That
Well,
is a
you can't
dangerous.
win either way, Heidi. In 10 years, they're going to come at you and be like, you knew, why didn't you say something?
I know.
You
It's
can't
so
win either way.
And so as I sat there at dinner for the first time in a long time, as they told me all about how they had shingles and they were getting their boosters, and I'm like, okay. And I just went, huh, yeah, sounds good. I was like,
Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
all right, but it takes time to get to that point, right? Because you want to help people. It's hard. Yeah, I think that's the hardest part because, if you really have a love for people, which I do, I love people. I know there's people in the world that hate everyone, but I really want the best for people. Like sometimes people are like, that's weird. Why would you want to do a prayer meeting for this person you don't even know? I'm like, why not? Right? Like, and
you're
they
Heidi
just are
Luv.
like, I'm just like, well, what if we help? What if we make the difference? You know what I mean? And I just always think like maybe if more people thought that they did make a difference, they would do more, you know?
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
Take a little bit
yeah.
more power in who you are. I think we've given all our power away over the years, and it really is the awakening, and it's time to take it all back.
Yep. And don't just hide it. Like don't black pill people either, but like you said, know your audience, right? You said that earlier. Like I was new into all of that because remember, I was a normie till 2020. So meeting my future son-in-law, I was just vomiting stuff on him. I'm sure it was scary. Like I'm sure he's like, your mom is completely imbalanced. Like, and it probably did feel that way to him, and now I know enough to, like you said, know your audience. Check it out. The
Yeah.
first thing I ask anybody at my job, because they're like, I heard you're a podcaster and like a lot like a bigger one. I'm like, oh, well, I'm not like Joe Rogan or anything, but yeah, it gets out there. And they're like, but you're on like some of these shows, and I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, what's your podcast name? I'm like, Are You a Mormon? First thing I ask, because I'm like, you're gonna hate me. Like, you might not want to listen, but yeah, know your people.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, of course.
I want everybody to go check out the Unfiltered Rise if you can handle it. If not, just come back to the Hair Genius podcast and we'll continue on having delightful conversations. And, like, subscribe, share, check it all out because everybody's got an incredible story. And we just got a nugget of your incredible story, Heidi. So thank you so much for joining us.
It's been really fun uncovering the genius of you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's fun. It's a fun thing to do. And I like meeting your wife. I've met you a lot. So he's delightful.
Awesome.
You be kind to her. You'll want to keep her.
He's never, well, that's not true. Sometimes but on the podcast, I'm like, oh, it's always on me.
Oh, well, you guys are adorable. Thank you again for having me on.
Sounds good. And we'll see you guys next time.